During a luxurious party, a poor girl surprises everyone by asking to play the piano in front of the elite. The owner of the house, a young millionaire trained to perfection, hesitates for a moment and says yes. What she plays, without sheet music or technique, silences the room and moves even the coldest of hearts. But this boldness triggers an unexpected reaction that could change the fate of both of them forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the subway car as Emily Parker clutched her daughter's small hand. At 32, Emily's face showed the weathered determination of a woman who had faced life's hardships head-on. Her daughter, 5-year-old Lily, stared wide-eyed at the blurring landscape of Manhattan as the train rumbled toward the Upper East Side. "Remember what I told you, honey," Emily whispered, smoothing Lily's curly brown hair. "This is a big day. For Mommy, the Whitmore family is very important and this job means everything to us right now." Lily nodded solemnly, her large hazel eyes understanding more than a child her age should. The little girl clutched her worn backpack containing a coloring book, some crayons and a small toy keyboard. A birthday gift from her father before he left them 2 years ago to pursue his music career in California, never to return. As they emerged from the subway station, Emily paused, taking in the towering brownstones and pristine streets of the Upper East Side. The Whitmore residence stood 6 stories tall, an architectural marvel of limestone and wrought iron that seemed to command respect from the very sidewalk. "It's like a castle, Mommy," Lily whispered, her neck craned upward. Emily smiled nervously. "Yes, baby, and remember, today you need to stay very quiet in the room they give us. Can you promise me that? Just for today, until I figure out a better arrangement." The doorman greeted them with practiced politeness, his eyes briefly registering Lily's presence before he directed them to the service entrance at the side of the building. Emily had expected this. She was, after all, the new housekeeper, not a guest. Mrs. Winters, the stern-faced head housekeeper, met them at the door. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her black dress seemed to absorb all light around her. "Mrs. Parker," she said, her voice clipped, "we weren't informed you'd be bringing a child." Her gaze fell on Lily, who instinctively moved closer to her mother. "I apologize, Mrs. Winters. My childcare fell through at the last minute. I promise she won't be any trouble, and I'm arranging something permanent starting tomorrow." Emily's voice remained steady, though her heart raced. Mrs. Winters pursed her lips. "The Whitmores are hosting a recital this afternoon for their son, Alexander. There will be over 50 guests in attendance. Your daughter must remain in your quarters and must not make any noise whatsoever." "Of course, she's very well behaved." "See that she is." Mrs. Winters turned sharply. "Follow me. I'll show you. To your room and then we'll begin your orientation." They followed her through a maze of corridors, each more opulent than the last. Lily's eyes widened at the gleaming marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and oil paintings in gilded frames. Emily squeezed her daughter's hand, a silent reminder to stay close. Their room was small but clean, tucked away in the far corner of the 5th floor. A single bed, a narrow dresser, and a small desk occupied most of the space. A window overlooked a brick wall. "You'll be responsible for the 3rd and 4th floors, including Master Alexander's quarters. Mrs. Whitmore is very particular about how his room is maintained." Mrs. Winters handed Emily a uniform, a simple grey dress with a white apron. "Change quickly, we begin in 15 minutes. When the door closed behind Mrs. Winters, Emily knelt before Lily. "Honey, I need you to be extra good today. Stay here and play quietly with your keyboard. Don't touch the volume button, okay?" Lily nodded solemnly. "I promise, Mommy." Emily changed quickly, kissed Lily's forehead, and with one last concerned glance, slipped out the door. Left alone, Lily sat on the edge of the bed, her legs dangling above the floor. She took out her toy keyboard and pressed the keys silently, her small fingers dancing across the plastic surface as she had done countless times before. Her father had taught her little melodies, guiding her fingers across real piano keys during the brief moments he was present in her life. After an hour, the silence of the room began to weigh on her. Faint sounds drifted up from below, Voices, laughter, and most enchantingly, music. The sound of a real piano, rich and resonant, called to her like a siren's song. Lily placed her toy keyboard back in her backpack and tiptoed to the door. She knew she had promised to stay put, but surely a quick peek wouldn't hurt. The music was so beautiful, so much richer than her toy could ever produce. The hallway was empty. Emboldened, Lily crept toward the sound, her small feet silent on the plush carpet. She followed the music down a grand staircase, careful to stay close to the wall. The notes grew louder, more distinct. A classical piece she didn't recognize but somehow felt she knew in her heart. Peering around a corner, she saw them. Dozens of adults in elegant clothing, champagne flutes in hand, gathered in a magnificent room with soaring ceilings and windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. At the center stood a gleaming black grand piano, and seated at it was a boy perhaps twice her age, his posture perfect, his fingers flying across the keys with precision. Alexander Whitmore played, with technical perfection, every note exactly as written in the score. His expression remained serious, almost detached, as he performed for the admiring crowd. When he finished, polite applause filled the room. He stood, bowed stiffly, and moved away from the piano. Lily watched, mesmerized, as the adults returned to their conversations. The piano sat empty now, its lid open, keys exposed like an invitation. Without conscious thought, Lily found herself moving forward, drawn by an irresistible force. She slipped between adults who barely noticed her, their attention on their conversations and champagne. When she reached the piano, she stood on tiptoe, running a finger reverently along its polished surface. A woman in a silk dress nearly tripped over her. "Oh, where did you come from, little one?" Conversations nearby stalled. Eyes turned toward Lily, who suddenly felt very small in her simple dress and scuffed shoes. I was wondering if I could play," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A few guests chuckled, others exchanged uncomfortable glances. Alexander, who had been standing with his father near the windows, turned with curiosity. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, the lady of the house, stepped forward, tall and elegant in her designer dress. Her blonde hair swept into an immaculate updo. She looked down at Lily with confusion. "And who might you be?" she asked, her voice controlled but cold. Before Lily could answer, Emily appeared at the doorway, horror written across her face as she spotted her daughter at the center of attention. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Whitmore," Emily said, rushing forward. "This is my daughter. I had no childcare today and she was supposed to stay upstairs. I'll take her back immediately." Eleanor Whitmore's expression hardened. "I see. Well, perhaps you should let her play." The voice came from Alexander, who had moved closer. At 10 years old, he carried himself with the confidence of someone much older, his blue eyes curious beneath a sweep of dark hair. "Alex," his mother began, "this isn't appropriate." "I want to hear her play," Alexander insisted, something in his voice surprising even himself. "Everyone's heard me 100 times. Let's hear something different." A tense silence fell over the room. Eleanor looked from her son to her husband, James Whitmore, who gave a slight nod. "Very well," Eleanor said tightly. "One short piece." Alexander approached the piano and helped Lily onto the bench, placing a cushion beneath her so she could reach the keys properly. Lily looked up at him gratefully, then placed her small hands on the keys. For a moment she hesitated, overwhelmed by the instrument before her and the audience around her. Then, taking a deep breath, she began to play. The melody that emerged was simple but heartfelt, a lullaby her father had taught her, embellished with her own intuitive variations. She played with a natural expressiveness that belied her years, her small body swaying slightly with the rhythm, her face a portrait of pure joy. The room fell silent. Even those who had been whispering ceased. Emily watched, her hand pressed. To her mouth, equal parts proud and terrified, Alexander stood transfixed. He had been playing piano since he was 3, had won junior competitions across the Northeast, but he had never played like this, with such uninhibited emotion, such natural connection to the music. When Lily finished, there was a moment of Stunned silence before the room erupted in genuine applause, not the polite, obligatory kind that had followed Alexander's performance, but spontaneous, heartfelt appreciation. Lily beamed, looking to her mother for approval. Emily's face was a complex mixture of pride, fear, and astonishment. As the applause died down, Eleanor Whitmore's voice cut through. "That was unexpected. Mrs. Parker, I believe it's time for your daughter to return upstairs." Emily hurried forward to collect Lily, murmuring apologies. As they turned to leave, Alexander called out, "Wait, what's your name?" Lily turned back, her small face bright with happiness. "I'm Lily," she said. "I'm Alex," he replied, something changing in his expression as their eyes met, a recognition of something kindred, a connection neither could yet understand. Emily ushered Lily from the room. Whispers erupted among the guests. Eleanor Whitmore's face was a mask of composure, but her eyes followed the small girl with an unreadable expression. James Whitmore stepped closer to his wife. "That child has remarkable talent," he murmured. "She has no training, no discipline," Eleanor replied quietly, "just emotion and instinct." "That's not talent, it's novelty." But Alexander wasn't listening to either of them. He was still staring at the doorway where Lily had disappeared, the echo of her simple, heartfelt melody still resonating in his mind, and somehow in his heart. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. He lay in his four-poster bed, staring at the ornate ceiling of his bedroom, the notes of Lily's simple melody still dancing through his mind. For years, he had practiced 4 hours daily, mastering Chopin, Bach, and Beethoven with technical precision that impressed his instructors and pleased his mother. Yet he couldn't recall ever feeling what he'd witnessed on Lily's face, pure joy in the music itself. He slipped out of bed and padded across his room to the baby grand piano in the corner, a gift for his 8th birthday. Sitting at the bench, he placed his fingers on the keys but didn't press down. What was it about her playing that had moved everyone so deeply? It certainly wasn't technical skill. He could play pieces 100 times more complex. But there had been something else, something he couldn't name. "You should be asleep." Alexander turned to find his mother standing in the doorway, her silk robe cinched tightly at the waist, her face freshly creamed for the night. "I was thinking about today," he said honestly. Eleanor Whitmore entered the room and sat beside him on the bench. In the dim light, her face looked softer, the lines of perpetual control momentarily relaxed. "That girl's playing was quite unusual," she said, choosing her words carefully. "It was beautiful," Alexander replied. "Not perfect, but real." A shadow passed over Eleanor's face. "There was a time I played like that," she said, so quietly Alexander wasn't sure he was meant to hear. "Before Juilliard, before the critics and competitions." Alexander stared at his mother in surprise. She rarely spoke of her own musical career, abruptly abandoned when she married his father. He knew she had been considered promising, but nothing more. "What happened?" he asked. Eleanor's fingers ghosted over the keys without pressing them. "I learned that feeling isn't enough. Discipline, technique, precision. These are what separate dilettantes from artists." She stood abruptly. "Back to bed, Alexander. You have lessons in the morning." After she left, Alexander remained at the piano. Slowly, hesitantly, he tried to recreate Lily's melody. The notes came easily enough, but something was missing. The life, the emotion. He played it again and again, growing increasingly frustrated. 3 floors below, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, watching Lily sleep. The events of the day replayed in her mind, filling her with conflicting emotions. Pride in her daughters, unexpected talent, fear for her new job so desperately needed, and something else, a guilty spark of hope that perhaps Lily's gift might someday open doors that had remained firmly closed to Emily herself. The next morning, Emily rose before dawn to begin her duties. She settled Lily with her coloring books and whispered strict instructions to remain in their room until she returned with breakfast. As Emily dusted the library on the 3rd floor, she was startled by Alexander's voice behind her. "Your daughter plays beautifully." Emily turned to find the boy watching her from the doorway, still in his pajamas despite the early hour. "Thank you," she said cautiously. "I apologize again for yesterday. It won't happen again. Alexander tilted his head. Where did she learn to play like that? Emily's hands stilled on the feather duster. Her father, she said after a moment. He was a jazz pianist at a club in Brooklyn. He would sit her on his lap and guide her hands when she was barely 3. She didn't add that Tom had left them 2 years ago, chasing dreams of stardom in Los Angeles, his occasional calls becoming less and less frequent until they stopped altogether. Is he famous? Alexander asked, eyes wide. Emily smiled sadly. No, just talented. She returned to her dusting, hoping the conversation was over. But Alexander remained. Could I talk to Lily again? I want to ask her about her playing. Emily hesitated. I don't think that would be appropriate, Master Alexander. Your mother is attending a charity luncheon today, he finished, and Dad's at the office until dinner. Please, I've never met anyone who plays like she does. Something in the boy's earnest expression softened Emily's resolve. I'll be bringing her lunch at noon in the kitchen. Perhaps you could stop by then. Alexander's face lit up. Thank you, Mrs. Parker. He dashed off, leaving Emily wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. At noon, Emily brought Lily to the kitchen as promised. Mrs. Winters was overseeing the preparation of Eleanor's evening soiree and barely acknowledged them as they settled at a small table in the corner. Lily was halfway through her sandwich when Alexander appeared, causing Mrs. Winters to nearly drop the tray she was inspecting. Master Alexander, what are you doing in the kitchen? I'm hungry, he replied smoothly. I thought I'd have lunch. Here today. Without waiting for a response, he joined Lily and Emily at their table. Mrs. Winters opened her mouth to object, then closed it, her lips pressed into a thin line. Very well, I'll have Sarah prepare something for you. Once she bustled away, Alexander turned his attention to Lily. That song you played yesterday, what was it? Lily looked up from her sandwich, suddenly shy. It doesn't have a name. Daddy taught me the beginning, and I made up the rest. Alexander's eyes widened. You made it up? How? Lily shrugged. I just hear it in my head, and my fingers find it. Alexander looked bewildered, as if she'd just explained quantum physics in Sanskrit, but without sheet music, without lessons. I never had lessons, Lily admitted. Daddy said music lives in your heart first, then your head, then your hands. Alexander fell silent, contemplating this foreign concept. Emily watched the exchange with growing unease. This innocent conversation was crossing boundaries she couldn't afford to have crossed. Lily, finish your lunch. We need to get back upstairs, she said gently. Could I show Lily the music room first? Alexander asked suddenly. Just for a few minutes, it's on the 4th floor and no one uses it except for my lessons. I don't think, Emily began. Please, Mommy? Lily's eyes shone with excitement. I promise I'll be extra good for the rest of the day. Emily glanced at her watch. She still had 20 minutes before she needed to continue her afternoon duties. 5 minutes, she conceded. That's all. The music room was smaller than Emily expected, intimate rather than grand, with sound-absorbing panels on the walls and large windows overlooking the park. A Steinway grand piano dominated the space, along with shelves of sheet music and a few comfortable chairs. Lily approached the piano reverently, her small hand hovering over the lid. May I? She whispered. Alexander nodded, opening the lid for her. Lily climbed onto the bench, adjusted her position and began to play. The same melody as yesterday, but with slight variations, a different flourish here, a new phrase there. Emily watched her daughter transform before her eyes. Shy, quiet Lily became confident, expressive, alive in a way she rarely was elsewhere. Alexander stood transfixed, studying her hands, her face, the subtle movements of her body as she played. When she finished, Alexander sat beside her on the bench. Can you teach me to play like that? Lily giggled. But you already know how to play. Much better than me. No, Alexander said, shaking his head. I know the notes. You know the music. He positioned his hands on the keys. Show me? What followed was a curious reversal. The trained prodigy learning from the untaught child. Lily guided Alexander's hands, encouraging him to feel rather than think, to listen rather than read. "Don't count in your head," she advised. "Listen to your heart counting instead." Emily checked her watch and was alarmed to see that 15 minutes had passed. "We need to go, Lily." "5 more minutes, please," Alexander pleaded. As Emily wavered, the door to the music room opened and Mrs. Winters stepped in. Her eyes widened at the tableau before her, Alexander and Lily seated together at the piano, Emily standing nearby. "Mrs. Parker," she said, her voice like ice, "I believe you have duties to attend to on the 3rd floor. Master Alexander, your tutor will be arriving shortly for your history lesson." Emily quickly gathered Lily, murmuring apologies as they hurried past Mrs. Winters. The head housekeeper's disapproving gaze followed them down the hallway. "Are we in trouble, Mummy?" Lily whispered. "No, honey," Emily assured her, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. "But we need to remember our place here. This is where I work, not where we socialize." Later that afternoon, as Emily polished silver in the dining room, Eleanor Whitmore appeared, fresh from her charity luncheon. She paused, observing Emily's work with a critical eye. "Mrs. Parker," she said coolly, "I understand your daughter was playing piano with my son today." Emily's heart sank. "Yes, ma'am. I apologize for the intrusion. It won't happen again." Eleanor studied her for a long moment. "My son has the finest instructors money can buy. He's been accepted to a prestigious music program this summer, the youngest student ever admitted. His talent has been carefully cultivated since he was a toddler." "Of course, Mrs. Whitmore," Emily said, keeping her eyes lowered. "And yet," Eleanor continued, "he cannot play with the natural expression your daughter displayed yesterday." There was something in her voice that Emily couldn't quite identify. Not anger, not exactly, but something more complex. "Where did she learn to play?" Emily hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Her father taught her the basics before he left us. The rest she's figured out on her own. She has a toy keyboard she practices on." "A toy keyboard," Eleanor repeated as if the words were in a foreign language. "Yes, ma'am, it was a gift from her father." Eleanor was silent for several moments. When she spoke again, her voice had a different quality, more measured, more deliberate. "Mrs. Winters tells me you're doing acceptable work so far. I'm trying my best, ma'am. See that you continue to do so." Eleanor turned to leave, then paused. "Your daughter's talent is unusual, undisciplined, but unusual." With that cryptic statement, she departed, leaving Emily to wonder whether she had just received a compliment or a warning. That evening, as Emily tucked Lily into bed, the little girl looked up with hopeful eyes. "Can I see Alex again tomorrow?" Emily smoothed her daughter's hair back from her forehead. "I don't think so, sweetheart. He's very busy with his lessons and Mommy needs to focus on her work." Lily's face fell. "But he likes my playing. He said it makes him happy." Emily kissed her forehead. "I know, baby, your playing makes everyone happy, but we have to remember that this is the Whitmore's home, not ours. We're here because I work here." As Lily drifted off to sleep, Emily sat by the window looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. In her wildest dreams, she had never imagined her daughter playing on a Steinway Grand, much less teaching a wealthy prodigy. It filled her with a complicated mixture of pride and fear. Pride in Lily's natural gift, fear of the boundaries being crossed. She didn't notice the shadow that passed by their door, pausing briefly before continuing down the hall. Alexander, reluctantly on his way to bed, his mind still full of melodies he was only beginning to feel rather than simply play. Over the next week, Alexander found increasingly creative ways to encounter Lily. He would accidentally be reading in the library when Emily was dusting. He would suddenly develop a craving for cookies when Lily was having her afternoon snack in the kitchen. Each brief interaction left him more fascinated by the girl who played from her heart rather than a score. For her part, Lily began to look forward to these chance meetings, her face lighting up whenever Alexander appeared. Despite their different worlds, They shared a language in music that transcended the boundaries of class and upbringing. Emily watched these interactions with growing concern. Mrs. Winters had begun to give her suspicious glances, and twice now, Emily had caught Eleanor Whitmore observing her son's conversations with Lily from a distance, her expression unreadable. On Friday afternoon, as Emily was changing linens in the guest rooms, Mrs. Winters appeared at her elbow. "Mrs. Parker," she said, her voice lowered, "a word of advice, if I may." Emily paused, a fresh pillowcase in her hands. "Yes, Mrs. Winters?" The head housekeeper glanced down the hallway before continuing. "I've been with the Whitmore family for 27 years. I've seen housekeepers come and go, many of them good workers like yourself." "Thank you," Emily said cautiously. "The ones who stay understand boundaries," Mrs. Winters continued. "Your daughter is becoming a distraction for young Master Alexander. Mrs. Whitmore has noticed." Emily's hands tightened on the pillowcase. "I've told Lily to keep to our room when she's not with me." "It's not your daughter seeking these encounters," Mrs. Winters said pointedly, "but it will be your position at risk if they continue." As the older woman turned to leave, Emily called after her, "What should I do?" Mrs. Winters paused. "Find alternative arrangements for your child during work hours, as was the original expectation." Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. "The girl has a gift, but this household is not the place for her to explore it." That evening, Emily made 3 phone calls to potential childcare options, each more discouraging than the last. As a single mother with limited income, her options were severely constrained. The most promising lead was an after-school program that could take Lily starting next month, still weeks away. As she hung up from the final call, there was a soft knock at her door. Emily opened it to find James Whitmore standing in the hallway, looking somewhat uncomfortable in the narrow service corridor. "Mr. Whitmore," Emily said, startled. In her 2 weeks of employment, she had exchanged perhaps 10 words with the patriarch of the family. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing wrong," he said, his voice low. "May I come in for a moment? I'd like to speak with you." Emily hesitated, then stepped aside. James entered, his tall frame making the small room seem even smaller. Lily, who had been playing quietly with her toy keyboard, looked up with wide eyes. "Hello," she said shyly. James smiled at her. "Hello, Lily. That's a nice keyboard you have there." "Thank you, sir. It's not as nice as your pianos, but I pretend it is." Something flickered in James's expression. "I imagine you do." He turned to Emily. "Mrs. Parker, I wanted to speak with you about your daughter's musical ability." Emily's heart began to race. Was this the prelude to being asked to keep Lily away from the house entirely? "My son has spoken of little else this past week," James continued, "and I must admit, her performance at the recital was quite remarkable." "Thank you," Emily said cautiously. James glanced at Lily, then back to Emily. "I understand you're seeking childcare arrangements." "Yes, sir. I found a program that can take her next month." "I have a proposition for you." James straightened his already impeccable posture. "Our regular housekeeper for the 1st and 2nd floors, Mrs. Collins, is taking a leave of absence to care for her ailing mother. We need someone to cover her duties, which would mean a significant increase in your hours and, of course, your pay." Emily blinked, trying to follow the unexpected turn in conversation. "That's very generous, Mr. Whitmore, but I'm not sure how that helps with my childcare situation." "I'm getting to that," he said, a hint of impatience in his voice. "My sister-in-law, Catherine Bennett, runs a music program for gifted children at her community arts center in Greenwich Village. She's agreed to take Lily during your working hours. There would be no charge to you, and she would receive proper musical instruction." Emily stared at him, speechless. "It would be a mutually beneficial arrangement," James continued smoothly. "You would have reliable childcare and increased income. Lily would receive the musical education her talent deserves, and—" he hesitated. "Alexander would have the opportunity to volunteer at the program twice weekly, which Catherine feels would be beneficial for his development as a musician." "I don't understand," Emily said finally. "Why would you do this?" James looked slightly uncomfortable. Let's just say I recognize talent when I see it. It would be a shame to let it go unnurtured. Does Mrs. Whitmore know about this proposal? A shadow crossed James's face. Eleanor and I have discussed it. She has her reservations but has agreed to a trial period. Emily glanced at Lily, who was watching them with curious eyes, too young to fully understand the conversation, but old enough to sense its importance. When would this start? Emily asked. Monday, James replied. Catherine is expecting you both at 9 o'clock. He handed Emily a business card with an address. Think about it over the weekend. Let Mrs. Winters know your decision by Sunday evening. After he left, Emily sat heavily on the bed, turning the card over in her hands. The offer was almost too perfect, solving her childcare dilemma while providing Lily with proper musical instruction. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there were unseen complications lurking beneath the surface. Was that Alex's daddy? Lily asked, breaking into her thoughts. Yes, honey. Is he going to let me play the big piano again? Emily smiled despite her concerns. Maybe something even better. We'll see. On Monday morning, Emily and Lily stood outside the Bennett Community Arts Center, a converted factory building with large windows and a colorful mural decorating its entrance. Lily clutched her mother's hand, excitement and nervousness battling across her expressive face. Are you sure they want me here, Mummy? What if I'm not good enough? Emily knelt to her daughter's level. They asked for you specifically, remember, and you are more than good enough. You're extraordinary. Inside, they were greeted by Catherine Bennett, a woman in her early 50s with the same blue eyes as Eleanor Whitmore, but with laugh lines instead of worry lines framing them. She welcomed them warmly, showing none of her sister's reserve. You must be Lily, she said, kneeling down. I've heard wonderful things about your playing. Would you like to see our music room? Lily nodded eagerly, her shyness momentarily forgotten. The music room was a bright, open space with several pianos, various other instruments lining the walls, and colorful rugs scattered across the hardwood floor. A few other children, ranging in age from 7 to 12, were already there. Some practicing, others arranging sheet music. These are some of our scholarship students, Catherine explained. They come from all over the city. Each has shown exceptional musical aptitude. Lily's eyes grew wide as she took in the scene. They're all like me. Catherine smiled. Each one is unique, but yes, they all have special gifts. Would you like to play something for us before your mother leaves? Lily looked to Emily for reassurance, received a nod, and then approached the nearest piano. The other children paused their activities, watching curiously as the small newcomer adjusted the bench and positioned her hands. The melody that emerged was the same one she had played at the Whitmore recital, but subtly different, fuller, more confident, with new variations that seemed to bubble up spontaneously from some inner wellspring of creativity. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before one of the older boys spoke up. Did you write that yourself? Lily nodded shyly. Cool, he said simply, and the other children murmured in agreement. Catherine's eyes were bright as she turned to Emily. She'll fit in perfectly here. We'll see you at 4 o'clock for pickup. As Emily reluctantly prepared to leave, Catherine added in a lower voice, James told me about the situation. I want you to know that Lily's scholarship is genuine, based on merit, not charity. Whatever is happening between my nephew and your daughter musically, it's something special. I've been teaching gifted children for 20 years and I've never seen anything quite like it. Emily's concerns eased slightly at the genuine warmth in Catherine's voice. Thank you for this opportunity. It means more than I can say. Thank my brother-in-law, Catherine replied with a wry smile. He may look like the typical Manhattan power broker, but he has a soft spot for genuine talent. Always has. Theta. Afternoon, when Emily arrived to pick up Lily, she found her daughter seated at a piano with Alexander beside her. They were playing a duet, a simple melody with Alexander providing a more complex accompaniment. What struck Emily most was her daughter's radiant happiness and, more surprisingly, the transformation in Alexander. Gone was the stiff, serious boy from the recital. In his place was a child fully absorbed in the joy of making music. His face animated, his body relaxed. They didn't notice her at first, too engrossed in their playing. It was Catherine who spotted Emily and signaled for her to wait, to let the children finish their piece. "They've been like this all afternoon," Catherine whispered. "He arrived after school and went straight to her. It's remarkable to watch." "Mrs. Whitmore approved this?" Emily asked, still finding it hard to believe. Catherine's expression grew more guarded. James convinced her it would be good for Alexander's musical development to mentor a younger student. "My sister is complex when it comes to music. She had her own dreams once." As the duet concluded, Lily spotted her mother and ran to her, bubbling with excitement. "Mommy, Miss Catherine says I have perfect pitch and natural improvisation skills. And Alex has been teaching me about scales and chords, and I've been teaching him about feeling the music instead of just playing the notes." Alexander approached more sedately, though his eyes shone with the same excitement. "Lily's amazing, Mrs. Parker. She doesn't even know music theory, but she can hear a piece once and play it back with her own variations." "I'm glad you two had fun," Emily said, carefully neutral despite the warmth spreading through her at seeing her daughter. "So happy. Can I come back tomorrow?" Lily asked. "You'll be here every weekday while I'm working," Emily assured her. "But now we need to let Alexander get home for dinner." "Actually," Catherine interjected, "James asked if Alexander could join you both for a quick dinner at the cafe next door. He has a late meeting and Eleanor is attending a gallery opening." Emily hesitated, acutely aware of the unusual situation, the son of her employers sharing a casual dinner with her and Lily. "Please, Mrs. Parker," Alexander asked. "I almost never get to eat at regular restaurants." The pleading look in both children's eyes wore down Emily's resistance. "All right, but just for an hour." The cafe was a cozy establishment frequented by artists and musicians from the community center. As they settled into a booth, Emily couldn't help noticing how out of place Alexander looked in his prep school uniform, and yet how completely at ease he seemed sitting across from Lily. Over grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, the children chatted excitedly about music, with Alexander explaining theory concepts he'd learned, and Lily describing how different songs made her feel. "My teacher says I need to focus more on technique," Alexander confided, "but since I met Lily, I keep thinking about what her dad said, about music living in your heart first." "Your playing today was beautiful," Emily told him. "I could hear the difference." Alexander beamed at the compliment. "Really? I've been trying to feel it more like Lily does." He hesitated, then added, "My mother doesn't like it when I play that way. She says it's undisciplined." Emily chose her words carefully. There's value in both approaches. Technique provides the foundation, but emotion gives music its soul. "That's what Miss Catherine said," Alexander exclaimed. "She said I need both to be a complete musician." As they walked back to the community center where James would pick up Alexander, the boy grew pensive. "Mrs. Parker, do you think Lily and I could be friends, real friends, not just music partners?" The question caught Emily off guard. "I think you already are friends, Alexander." He shook his head. "Alex, please call me Alex. Only my mother calls me Alexander all the time." "Alex," Emily amended, touched by the request. "It's just," he continued, "my mother says I need to focus on my own development, that Lily is a distraction." Emily's heart sank, so Eleanor Whitmore wasn't as accepting of this arrangement as James had suggested. "What do you think?" she asked gently. Alex considered the question with a seriousness beyond his years. "I think Lily makes me a better musician and a happier person." He glanced ahead to where Lily was skipping along the sidewalk, humming to herself. "Before I met her, playing piano felt like homework. Now it feels like magic?" Emily suggested. Alex's face lit up. "Yes, exactly like magic." As they reached the community center, a sleek black car was already waiting. James Whitmore stepped out, nodding a greeting to Emily. "Did you have a good day, son?" he asked Alex. "The best, Dad. Lily taught me how to improvise on a blues scale, and I didn't even think about counting beats. I just felt them." James smiled, a hint of nostalgia in his expression. "That's wonderful. Say goodbye now. We need to get home." As Alex climbed into the car, he called out, "See you tomorrow, Lily." Lily waved enthusiastically. "Bye, Alex. Remember to practice listening with your heart." As the car pulled away, Emily felt a mixture of joy at her daughter's happiness and apprehension about the future. This arrangement seemed too precarious, balanced on the competing wishes of James and Eleanor Whitmore, with Alex and Lily caught in the middle. "He's my best friend, Mommy," Lily said as they walked to the subway station. "He knows all about music notes and things I don't understand, but I know things he doesn't too. We help each other." Emily squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's what friends do, baby. They help each other grow." She only hoped that the Whitmores, particularly Eleanor, would continue to allow this unlikely friendship to flourish. The autumn. Leaves turned to vibrant shades of red and gold as September gave way to October. For 6 weeks, the arrangement continued, Lily attending Catherine's music program during the day, Alex joining them twice a week after school, and Emily working extended hours at the Whitmore residence. Each day, Lily's musical abilities flourished, under proper instruction, while Alex's playing gained the emotional depth it had previously lacked. Catherine had placed them in a special project together, a holiday concert duet that would showcase both Alex's technical mastery and Lily's natural expressiveness. The piece was a complex arrangement of Carol of the Bells that Catherine had adapted specifically for them, challenging enough for Alex while allowing Lily's improvisational skills to shine. On a crisp Tuesday afternoon, Emily arrived at the Community Center to find Catherine watching the children with a thoughtful expression. "They've been working on this passage for an hour," Catherine said quietly as Emily approached. "Neither one willing to give up until they get it right. I've never seen such determination in children so young." On the stage, Alex and Lily sat side by side at the grand piano, their heads bent together as they worked through a difficult section of music. Alex would demonstrate a technical passage, Lily would suggest an emotional interpretation, and together they would try again and again until both were satisfied. "I've been meaning to ask," Emily said, "how is Lily doing with formal training? Is she falling behind the other students because of her late start?" Catherine's eyes never left the children. Quite the opposite. She absorbs theory like a sponge, catching up on years of formal education in weeks. Her sight reading is still developing, but her ear is extraordinary. She can hear a piece once and recreate it, often with her own embellishments. "And Alex?" James mentioned that this experience was meant to help him, too. Catherine's expression softened. "My nephew has been trapped in a box of technical perfection for years. Lily is helping him break free of it. Listen." On stage, Alex was playing a passage alone, a run of complex arpeggios that would have impressed any audience. But unlike his performance at the recital months ago, there was now feeling behind each note, a subtle expressiveness that transformed the technical exercise into genuine music. "That's new," Catherine said simply. "That's Lily's influence." As they watched, Lily placed her small hand over Alex's, guiding his phrasing. The gesture was so natural, so unself-conscious, that Emily felt a lump form in her throat. These two children from vastly different worlds had formed a connection that transcended their circumstances, a pure artistic collaboration unmarred by the social boundaries that separated them. "Mrs. Parker," Catherine said hesitantly, "I've been approached by the director of the Manhattan Youth Symphony. They're looking for fresh talent for their spring showcase. I'd like to recommend both children for an audition." Emily's eyes widened. "The Manhattan Youth Symphony? Isn't that extremely competitive?" "Extraordinarily so, but these two..." Catherine gestured toward the stage. "Together they create something magical. The director is a friend of mine. He's willing to come here next week for a private audition." Emily hesitated. "It sounds wonderful, but I would need to discuss it with Lily first, and Alex's parents would need to approve." "James has already given his blessing," Catherine said. "Eleanor..." She paused. "My sister is more complicated. She was once considered for the New York Philharmonic, you know, before she married James." "What happened?" Emily asked, surprised. by this revelation. Catherine's expression grew distant. She chose a different path, or perhaps it was chosen for her. Either way, she gave up her musical career for marriage and motherhood. I don't think she's ever quite reconciled with that decision. Later that evening, as Emily tucked Lily into bed in their small room at the Whitmore residence, she broached the subject of the audition. "Miss Catherine thinks you and Alex should try out for a special orchestra," she explained. "It would be a big commitment, with extra rehearsals and eventually a performance in a real concert hall." Lily's eyes widened. "Like where the grown-up musicians play?" "Exactly like that, but it would be very challenging, and you'd have to work even harder on your music." Lily was quiet for a moment, considering. "Would Alex and I still play together?" "Yes, that's the idea. Miss Catherine thinks you bring out the best in each other." A smile spread across Lily's face. "Then I want to do it. Alex makes playing fun, and he says I help him remember why he loves music." Emily kissed her daughter's forehead. "We'll tell Miss Catherine tomorrow. Now get some sleep, my little maestro." After Lily had drifted off, Emily sat by the window, watching the lights of Manhattan twinkle in the distance. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of change. Lily blossoming under Catherine's tutelage, their financial situation improving with Emily's increased hours, and most surprisingly, the growing friendship between Lily and Alex that seemed to defy the social barriers between them. Yet beneath this newfound stability, Emily sensed an undercurrent of tension. Mrs. Winters had become increasingly formal in their interactions. James Whitmore, while supportive of the musical arrangement, seemed cautious whenever Eleanor was present, and Eleanor herself maintained a cool distance, her interactions with Emily strictly professional, never once inquiring about Lily's progress. At the music program her own sister directed. The next morning, as Emily was polishing the silver collection in the formal dining room, Eleanor Whitmore appeared in the doorway. She was dressed impeccably as always, her blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, her posture perfect. "Mrs. Parker," she said, her voice cool, "a moment of your time, please." Emily set down the polishing cloth. "Of course, Mrs. Whitmore." Eleanor entered the room fully, closing the door behind her, an unusual action that immediately put Emily on alert. "I understand my sister has proposed an audition for the Manhattan Youth Symphony," Eleanor began without preamble. "For both your daughter and Alexander." "Yes, ma'am, she mentioned it yesterday." Eleanor's fingers traced the edge of the mahogany dining table. "The symphony is very prestigious. Children from the finest families in New York compete fiercely for positions." Emily remained silent, uncertain where this conversation was heading. "My son has been preparing for such opportunities his entire life," Eleanor continued. "Private instructors, music camps, competitions, since he was 6 years old." She paused. "Your daughter has been playing for how long?" "She's been playing since she was 3, Emily replied evenly, "but she's only had formal instruction these past weeks." Eleanor's eyebrow arched slightly. "Precisely my point. While Lily undoubtedly has natural ability, she lacks the years of training that the symphony typically requires." "Miss Catherine seems to think she's ready," Emily said, struggling to keep her voice neutral. "My sister has always had a soft spot for undiscovered talent." Eleanor's tone made it clear this wasn't entirely a compliment. "But I'm concerned about setting Lily up for disappointment. The audition process can be brutal." Emily felt a flare of defensive anger, but suppressed it. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll discuss it further with Catherine." Eleanor studied her for a long moment. "There's something else you should consider, Mrs. Parker. Alexander has become quite attached to your daughter." "They've become good friends," Emily acknowledged cautiously. "Too attached, I fear." Eleanor's voice took on a sharper edge. "His primary instructor reports that he's becoming resistant to technical exercises, insisting on playing with feeling instead of precision. His last practice session ended with him declaring that Lily says music should make you feel something, not just sound perfect." Emily didn't know how to respond to this, so she remained silent. "While I'm sure your daughter means well," Eleanor continued, "Alexander is on a specific educational path. He has been accepted to the Brentwood Summer Institute next year, the youngest pianist in their history. This friendship, while charming, may be becoming a distraction from his true potential. The implication was clear. Lily's influence was unwelcome, at least in Eleanor's eyes. "I see," Emily said quietly. Eleanor moved toward the door, then paused. "My husband believes this arrangement has benefits for both children. I've agreed to a trial period. But perhaps it would be best if the children focused on their individual development rather than this duet performance Catherine has planned." After Eleanor left, Emily leaned against the dining table, her heart racing. The message couldn't have been clearer if Eleanor had stated it outright. Lily was acceptable, as long as she didn't interfere with Alexander's carefully planned future. That afternoon, Emily arrived at the community center earlier than usual, hoping to speak with Catherine before the children finished their lessons. She found Catherine in her office reviewing sheet music. "Eleanor spoke to me today," Emily began without preamble, "about the audition." Catherine set down her pencil. "I expected she might. What did she say?" Emily recounted the conversation, watching Catherine's expression grow increasingly troubled. "She's afraid," Catherine said when Emily finished. "Of what?" "Lily is hardly a threat to Alex's future," Catherine sighed. "Not of Lily specifically, of what she represents." She gestured for Emily to sit. "You have to understand Eleanor's history to make sense of her present. She was a brilliant pianist, more naturally gifted than I ever was. By 19, she was being considered for prestigious conservatories, even had preliminary auditions with major orchestras." "What happened?" Emily asked. "She met James. His family was old money, extremely influential in New York society. They fell in love. But his parents made it clear that a concert pianist was not an acceptable wife for their son. A difficult choice had to be made. She chose marriage," Emily guessed. "She chose what she thought was happiness," Catherine corrected gently, "but she never stopped mourning the path not taken. When Alexander showed musical aptitude, she poured all her frustrated ambitions into him. His success became her redemption. And now Lily is disrupting that plan." "Not disrupting," Catherine said thoughtfully. "Transforming. Alexander is becoming the musician he was meant to be, not just the one Eleanor envisioned. That's terrifying. For her." "What should I do?" Emily asked. "I don't want to jeopardize my job, but I don't want to hold Lily back either." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "Proceed with the audition. I'll handle my sister. Just prepare Lily for the possibility that things may change afterward, regardless of the outcome." When the children emerged from their lesson, faces flushed with excitement, Emily pushed her concerns aside. Lily ran to her, eager to demonstrate the new passage she had mastered. "Miss Catherine says we're ready for the audition, Mommy," she exclaimed. "Alex helped me with the hard parts, and I helped him make it sound like a real Christmas bell." Alex nodded enthusiastically. "We're going to play it as a duet. Miss Catherine says it's unusual, but the symphony director might make an exception because of our..." "What?" "Was the word synergy," Catherine supplied with a smile. "It means you're better together than apart." The audition was scheduled for the following Monday. Throughout the week, both children practiced with renewed dedication, the excitement of the opportunity fueling their efforts. Emily watched Lily transform before her eyes, more confident, more focused, yet still retaining the natural joy that made her playing so special. On Sunday evening, as Emily helped Lily select an outfit, for the audition there was a knock at their door. To her surprise, James Whitmore stood in the hallway. "May I come in?" he asked, his expression serious. Emily nodded, a sense of foreboding settling over her. James entered, nodding a greeting to Lily before turning to Emily. "I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow's audition." "Is there a problem?" Emily asked, already anticipating the answer. James hesitated. "Eleanor has concerns about the direction of Alexander's musical education. She feels that his participation in the community center program may be affecting his progress with his primary instructor." "I see," Emily said quietly. "And what do you think, Mr. Whitmore?" James ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "I think my son is happier than I've seen him in years. His playing has a depth it lacked before. He glanced at Lily, who was watching them with solemn eyes. "Your daughter has given him a gift that no instructor could provide." "But," Emily prompted, hearing the unspoken qualification in his voice, "but I have to consider Eleanor's wishes as well. She's devoted her life to Alexander's development." He straightened, his decision apparently made. "The audition will proceed as planned tomorrow. After that, we'll need to reevaluate the arrangement." After he left, Emily sat heavily on the bed. Lily climbed into her lap, her small face serious. "Are they going to make Alex stop playing with me?" she asked quietly. Emily hugged her daughter close. "I don't know, sweetheart. But whatever happens, you'll keep making your beautiful music, and no one can take away the friendship you and Alex have built." Lily was quiet for a moment, then said with surprising maturity, "If tomorrow is our last time playing together, I want it to be the best ever, so Alex will always remember." Emily blinked back tears at her daughter's words. "It will be, baby. It will be the best ever." The next day dawned clear and bright. Catherine had arranged for the audition to take place in the community center's performance space, with only the symphony director, herself, and the children's parents present. Eleanor and James arrived precisely on time, Eleanor's face a mask of composed neutrality, James offering Emily a brief, encouraging smile. The symphony director, a distinguished man with salt and pepper hair and piercing eyes, greeted them all professionally before taking his seat. Catherine led the children to the grand piano at center stage, making brief introductions. "This is somewhat unconventional," the director noted, glancing down at his notes. "A duet performance for individual auditions. I believe once you hear them, you'll understand why," Catherine replied confidently. Alex and Lily took their places at the piano, Lily on the higher keys, Alex on the lower. They looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them, before Alex nodded to indicate they were ready. What followed was a performance that transcended the simple holiday melody at its core. Their arrangement of Carol of the Bells began traditionally, showcasing Alex's technical precision, before evolving into something uniquely their own. Lily's natural expressiveness and improvisational flourishes transformed the piece, while Alex provided a foundation of technical brilliance that supported and enhanced her creativity. They moved together as if they'd been playing as a duo for years rather than weeks, anticipating each other's phrasing, responding to subtle cues that only they perceived. The music swelled and receded, joyful then contemplative, structured yet free. Emily glanced at the adults watching. The symphony director was leaning forward, his expression intent. James was smiling openly. Catherine's eyes shone with pride. And Eleanor. Eleanor sat perfectly still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face a complex mixture of emotions, recognition, pride, and something that looked almost like grief. As the final notes faded, there was a moment of profound silence. Before the symphony director stood. "Extraordinary," he said simply. "Absolutely extraordinary. I came expecting to evaluate two individual musicians. Instead, I found a partnership of remarkable maturity and balance." He turned to Catherine. "I want them both, as a duo. We'll feature them in the spring showcase." Catherine beamed. "I was hoping you'd say that." The children exchanged excited glances, Lily bouncing slightly on the bench, Alex breaking into a rare, uninhibited grin. "However," the director continued, "this would require intensive preparation. 3 rehearsals weekly starting in January. A significant commitment for both families." All eyes turned to Eleanor, whose expression had returned to its usual composed neutrality. She rose gracefully, approaching the stage where the children sat. "Alexander," she said, her voice carefully measured, "is this what you want? To perform as a duo rather than a solo pianist?" Alex looked at his mother directly. "Yes, Mother. Lily makes me a better musician. We're better together." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Lily, studying her with new intensity. "And you, young lady? Are you prepared for the discipline this opportunity will require?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Yes, ma'am. I'll work very hard, I promise." For a long moment, Eleanor was silent, something unreadable passing behind her eyes. Then, with a slight nod, she turned to the symphony director. "We accept the offer. Both children will participate." The rehearsal schedule was quickly arranged, with Catherine agreeing to oversee their preparation. As the meeting concluded, Emily found herself face to face with Eleanor in the hallway outside the performance space. "Mrs. Parker," Eleanor said quietly. "Her word, if you please." Emily braced herself, uncertain what to expect after the emotional roller coaster of the past hour. "Your daughter's talent is undeniable," Eleanor began, surprising Emily with the directness of the compliment. "Unconventional and in need of technical refinement, but genuine." "Thank you," Emily said cautiously. Eleanor's gaze drifted to where the children were excitedly discussing their performance with Catherine and James. "I recognize what she has, what they have together." A shadow passed over her face. "It's something rare." She turned back to Emily, her expression resolute. "I will ensure they have the resources they need to succeed with the symphony, both of them, but I expect absolute commitment to their development. This isn't a game or a hobby." "Lily takes her music very seriously," Emily assured her. "As seriously as a 5-year-old can take anything." For the first time in their acquaintance, a ghost of a smile touched Eleanor's lips. "Yes, I suppose that's true." The smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. "My son has been on a particular path since he was 3 years old. Your daughter has altered that path in ways I didn't anticipate. For the better, I think," Emily ventured. Eleanor didn't confirm or deny this assessment. "We shall see," she said simply, before rejoining her husband and son. As Emily watched the Whitmore family leave, Alex turning back to wave enthusiastically to Lily, she felt a cautious hope blossom. Perhaps Eleanor's ice was beginning to thaw. Perhaps this unlikely friendship between two children from different worlds might survive after all. Lily skipped over to her mother, her face radiant with happiness. "Did you hear, Mommy? We're going. Had to play in a real concert hall. Alex says it's huge with red velvet seats and gold decorations everywhere." Emily hugged her daughter close. "I heard, baby. I'm so proud of you." Catherine approached, smiling at Lily's excitement. "You were wonderful today, both of you." "Do you think Mrs. Whitmore liked our playing?" Lily asked. She didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. Catherine exchanged a knowing glance with, "Emily, I think my sister was deeply moved by your performance. She just shows it differently than most people." As they left the community center, Lily chattering excitedly about the spring showcase, Emily allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, music had begun to bridge the vast divide between their worlds. Winter descended upon New York City, transforming the concrete metropolis into a wonderland of twinkling lights and pristine snow. As Christmas approached, the Whitmore household buzzed with preparations for their annual holiday gala, an event that brought together the city's elite for an evening of carefully orchestrated opulence. In the midst of these preparations, a subtle shift had occurred in the household dynamics. Eleanor Whitmore, while still maintaining her characteristic reserve, had begun to take a more active interest in Lily's musical development. Twice now, she had appeared at the community center during the children's rehearsals, observing silently from the back of the room. Though she offered no direct feedback, Catherine reported that her sister had made arrangements for a renowned piano instructor to provide additional technical training for Lily, complementing the emotional expressiveness that came to her naturally. For Emily, these changes brought a mixture of gratitude and unease. While she appreciated the opportunities being extended to her daughter, she couldn't help wondering about the unspoken expectations that might accompany them. On a snowy Wednesday afternoon, as Emily was arranging fresh flowers in the main entryway, Eleanor approached her with an unexpected request. "Mrs. Parker," she began, her voice as measured as always, "as you know, our annual Christmas gala is this Saturday evening." "Yes, ma'am." "Mrs. Winters has briefed the staff on our duties." Eleanor nodded. "There's been a change to the entertainment portion of the evening. I've decided to include a brief performance by Alexander and Lily." Emily nearly dropped the crystal vase she was holding. "At the gala, with all your guests. Is that a problem?" Eleanor's eyebrow arched slightly. "No, of course not." Emily said quickly. I'm just surprised. The children haven't mentioned it. I only finalized the decision this morning. They'll be informed during their lesson today. Eleanor adjusted an already perfect arrangement of poinsettias. I assume you have appropriate attire for Lily. The dress code is formal. Emily hesitated. Lily's wardrobe consisted primarily of practical school clothes and play outfits, with one good dress for special occasions that was nowhere near the standard of a Whitmore gala. Eleanor seemed to read her thoughts. I've taken the liberty of having something suitable delivered to your room. Consider it a performance costume. She paused, then added, I would appreciate if you could ensure she practices proper etiquette for the evening. These gatherings can be intimidating for those unaccustomed to them. After Eleanor departed, Emily stood motionless, trying to process this development. A performance at the Whitmore Gala would place Lily before the most influential people in Manhattan, potential patrons and supporters who could open doors that Emily had never imagined accessible to her daughter. Yet it also meant placing a 5-year-old child in a pressure-filled environment where her every note would be scrutinized. That evening, when Emily returned to their room, she found a garment bag laid carefully across the bed. Inside was a children's gown of midnight blue velvet with a silver sash and delicate crystal beading along the neckline, exactly Lily's size and more exquisite than anything the child had ever worn. Lily burst into the room moments later, her face alight with excitement. Mommy, Miss Catherine says Alex and I are going to play at a big party with important people and fancy food and everything. Emily lifted the dress for Lily to see. And you'll be wearing this beautiful gown. Lily's eyes widened as she reached out to touch the velvet reverently. It's like a princess dress, she whispered. Mrs. Whitmore had it sent for you. What do you think? Lily's expression grew suddenly serious. Does this mean she likes our playing now? Alex says she never smiles when we practice, but she doesn't look mad anymore either. Emily chose her words carefully. I think Mrs. Whitmore is beginning to see how special your music is. This performance is her way of showing that. Alex says his mom used to play piano too, but she stopped. He doesn't know why. Lily climbed onto the bed, her legs swinging. If I could play as good as Alex, I would never stop, not ever. The innocence of the statement struck Emily forcefully. How many dreams had Eleanor Whitmore set aside? How much resentment might still linger beneath her composed exterior? Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices, Emily said gently. Now let's try on this beautiful dress and practice our party manners for Saturday. Lily giggled as Emily demonstrated an exaggerated curtsy. The shadow of concern temporarily lifted from both their hearts. The night of the gala arrived with a fresh snowfall that blanketed the city in hushed whiteness. From her vantage point near the kitchen, Emily watched the Whitmore mansion transform into a glittering wonderland of crystal, silver, and candlelight. Caterers bustled about with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while a string quartet played softly in the corner of the grand ballroom. Emily had been assigned to assist with coat check, keeping her visible enough to supervise Lily, but discreet enough to maintain the illusion that the Whitmore household ran by magic rather than human effort. Mrs. Winters had briefed her thoroughly on the evening schedule. The children would perform at precisely 9:30, after dinner, but before the dancing began in earnest. At 8 o'clock, Catherine arrived to help prepare Lily, bringing with her a small velvet box. A loan from my personal collection, she explained, opening it to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a single musical note charm. Every pianist needs a lucky token for her debut. As Catherine fastened the bracelet around Lily's wrist, she added in a lower voice to Emily, Eleanor has invited several board members from the Manhattan Youth Symphony tonight, as well as the director of the Eastman Children's Program. Emily's eyes widened. The Eastman Program? Isn't that one of the most prestigious music programs for gifted children in the country? Yes, Catherine's eyes twinkled. My sister may be complicated, but when she commits to something, she doesn't do it halfway. By 9 o'clock, the mansion was filled with the city's elite, business magnates, arts patrons, politicians, and socialites. Emily caught glimpses of Lily and Alex, seated in a small anteroom off the main ballroom, reviewing their music one last time. Alex, handsome in his tailored suit, was the picture of composure, though Emily noticed him taking deep breaths the way Catherine had taught him to manage performance anxiety. Lily, resplendent in her blue velvet gown, swung her feet nervously, her silver bracelet catching the light with each movement. At precisely 9:25, James Whitmore called for attention, his commanding presence immediately quieting the assembled guests. Ladies and gentlemen, Eleanor and I are delighted to offer a special addition to our annual celebration this year. Our son Alexander and a remarkable young pianist named Lily Parker will perform an original arrangement of Silent Night that they have prepared especially for this evening. A murmur of interest passed through the crowd as Alex and Lily made their way to the grand piano in the center of the ballroom. Eleanor stood near the front, her expression carefully neutral, though Emily thought she detected a hint of tension in the set of her shoulders. The children settled at the piano, exchanging a glance that contained an entire conversation in itself. Then, with a slight nod from Alex, they began to play. The familiar carol emerged transformed under their hands, Alex providing a complex, technically brilliant foundation, while Lily wove a melodic line of such pure, soaring emotion that conversations stilled and champagne flutes were lowered. The two musical voices conversed, challenged, and ultimately harmonized with one another in a performance that spoke of both remarkable skill and genuine connection. Emily watched the faces of the audience, the initial polite interest giving way to genuine engagement, and finally to emotional response. More than one guest discreetly dabbed at eyes as the final notes faded into reverent silence. The applause that followed was immediate and enthusiastic. Alex and Lily stood from the bench, taking their bows as they had practiced. Emily's heart swelled with pride as she watched her daughter, small but poised, accepting the accolades with a mixture of joy and humility that couldn't be taught. As the children made their way back to the anteroom, guests descended upon them with compliments and questions. Emily moved closer, protective instincts kicking in as she saw Lily being surrounded by unfamiliar adults. But Catherine was already there, gracefully fielding inquiries and ensuring neither child felt overwhelmed. Eleanor approached Emily, a champagne flute held elegantly between manicured fingers. "Your daughter performed admirably," she said, her voice revealing nothing of her true thoughts. "Several guests have expressed interest in her background and training." "Thank you for giving her this opportunity," Emily replied sincerely. "It means more than I can express." Something flickered in Eleanor's eyes, a brief, unguarded moment before her customary reserve reasserted itself. The symphony director was impressed by their progress. He's considering featuring them in the opening piece rather than midway through the program. Before Emily could respond, a distinguished older woman in an emerald gown joined them. "Eleanor, darling, you've been holding out on us. That child is extraordinary. Where did you discover her?" Eleanor's smile remained perfectly in place. "Margaret, allow me to introduce Emily Parker, Lily's mother. Emily is a valued member of our household staff." Margaret's perfectly arched eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed? How unexpected." She turned to Emily with newfound interest. "Your daughter has remarkable talent, Mrs. Parker. Has she been studying long?" "She's only had formal training for a few months," Emily answered, "at Catherine Bennett's community program." "Catherine always did have an eye for diamonds in the rough," Margaret remarked, "though in this case I'd say the diamond was merely waiting for proper cutting and setting." She turned back to Eleanor. "The Eastman program would snap her up in an instant, you know. Though the financial requirements are considerable, an opportunity for the right patron to make a difference," Eleanor replied smoothly. "Now I believe James is trying to catch your husband's attention by the fireplace." As Margaret moved away, Eleanor's gaze returned to Emily. "You'll find that Lily's talent will open doors, but also invite scrutiny. The musical world can be both generous and cruel." There was something in her tone, a personal knowledge of that cruelty, that made Emily ask, "Is that why you stopped performing?" "The scrutiny." Eleanor's expression froze, and Emily immediately regretted the question. "I apologize, Mrs. Whitmore, that was inappropriate." To her surprise, Eleanor didn't dismiss her. Instead, she looked toward the children, now seated on a sofa surrounded by admirers, Lily's hand unconsciously seeking Alex's for reassurance. "I chose a different path," Eleanor said finally. "One expected of women of my background. Music was to be a finishing school accomplishment, not a career." She sipped her champagne. "The world has changed somewhat, though not as much as we might like to believe." The unexpected moment of candor ended as abruptly as it had begun. "You should join your daughter," Eleanor said, her professional distance restored. "There are people she should meet." The remainder of the evening passed in a whirlwind of introductions and conversations. Emily watched with a mixture of pride and apprehension as Lily charmed one influential music patron after another, her natural exuberance balanced by a surprising poise for a child her age. Alex remained close by, occasionally answering questions about their collaboration, but mainly providing silent support through his presence. It was nearly midnight when the last guests departed. Lily, despite her best efforts to remain alert, had fallen asleep on a settee in the library, her velvet gown spread around her like a midnight pool. Alex sat nearby, his own eyes heavy with exhaustion, but refusing to leave his friend's side. Emily entered quietly, intending to carry Lily back to their room. "You should get to bed, Alex. It's very late." He nodded sleepily. "We did good tonight, didn't we, Mrs. Parker?" "You were both wonderful," she assured him. "Everyone was impressed." "Mother said the Eastman people want to hear us again." He rubbed his eyes. "She seemed different after our performance, almost like she was happy and sad at the same time." Emily gently lifted Lily, who stirred but didn't wake. Sometimes music brings up complicated feelings, especially for people who love it deeply. Alex considered this with his characteristic thoughtfulness. "Do you think she regrets giving up piano?" The question was so direct, so insightful that Emily paused. "I think," she said carefully, "that your mother made choices that brought her you. And I doubt she regrets that for a moment." Alex smiled sleepily. "That's a nice way to think about it." He stood, stretching. "Good night, Mrs. Parker. Tell Lily I'll see her tomorrow at rehearsal." As Emily carried her sleeping daughter through the quiet mansion, she reflected on the evening's events. The performance had been an unqualified success, opening doors that Emily had never imagined possible for Lily. Yet something in Eleanor's brief moment of candor had unsettled her, a glimpse of regret, of paths not taken that seemed to hover beneath the surface of the Whitmore matriarch's carefully constructed life. The next morning, Lily awoke full of excitement about the previous night's triumph, eager to tell Emily every detail of the conversations she'd had with the important music people. Emily listened indulgently as she helped her daughter dress for the day, marveling at the child's recall of names and comments. "And Mr. Harrington, the one with the red bow tie, said he wants to come hear us at the symphony performance, and Mrs. Wilson said maybe I could play at her charity thing in the spring." And a knock at the door interrupted Lily's enthusiastic recounting. To Emily's surprise, Eleanor Whitmore stood in the hallway, immaculately dressed despite the early hours. "Good morning, Mrs. Parker, Lily." Her gaze settled on the child. "I trust you slept well after your big night?" Lily nodded earnestly. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the beautiful dress and for letting us play at your party." The corners of Eleanor's mouth lifted slightly. "You and Alexander did credit to yourselves and your training. I've received several calls this morning from guests who were quite impressed." She turned to Emily. "Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. The director of the Eastman program has expressed interest in auditioning both children for their summer intensive." Emily's heart leapt. The Eastman program was legendary, a breeding ground for musical prodigies that had launched countless careers. "That's wonderful news." "Indeed. However, there are practical matters to consider." Eleanor's gaze was direct. "The program requires a substantial financial commitment. There are tuition fees, housing costs, instrument rentals." She paused. "I've discussed it with James, and we are prepared to cover these expenses for Lily, should she be accepted." Emily blinked in surprise. "That's incredibly generous, Mrs. Whitmore, but it's not charity, Eleanor interrupted, seeming to anticipate her objection. "It's an investment in exceptional talent. And," she added with a hint of her usual crispness, "in my son's continued development. He and Lily have formed a musical partnership that benefits them both. Separating them at this juncture would be counterproductive." Before Emily could formulate a response, Eleanor continued, "There's another matter to discuss. The summer program is residential. The children would live on campus under supervision of the musical faculty." Lily, who had been listening with wide eyes, gasped, "Like sleepaway camp?" "Similar, yes," Eleanor confirmed, "with practice rooms instead of canoes." Emily's initial excitement dimmed. "I'm not sure Lily is ready to be away from home for an entire summer. She's only 5. "Almost 6, Lily corrected seriously, holding up fingers to emphasize the point. Eleanor's expression remained neutral. "The program typically doesn't accept students younger than 8. An exception would be made in Lily's case because of her extraordinary ability, and because Alexander would be there as well." She glanced at her watch. "Take some time to consider it. The auditions aren't until March, and the program doesn't begin until June." After she left, Emily sat heavily, on the bed, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. The opportunity was beyond anything she could have provided for Lily on her own. World-class instruction, connections to the finest musical institutions, a path to a future limited only by her daughter's talent and dedication. Yet the thought of sending her young child away for an entire summer into an environment designed for older students filled her with apprehension. And beneath that practical concern lurked a deeper, more selfish fear that Lily would move further into a world where Emily couldn't follow, couldn't protect her, couldn't even fully understand her experiences. "Can I go, Mummy?" Lily asked, her face alight with excitement. "Alex says Eastman has the best pianos in the whole world and teachers who played in famous orchestras and everything." Emily smoothed her daughter's curls. "We'll see, baby. It's a big decision. And you'd have to pass a very difficult audition first." "I'll practice extra hard," Lily promised solemnly, "every day, and I won't be scared to be away from home because Alex will be there too." Later that morning, as Emily went about her duties, she encountered Catherine in the music room, arranging sheet music for the children's upcoming lesson. "Eleanor told me about Eastman," Catherine said without preamble. "What do you think?" Emily sighed. "I think it's an incredible opportunity that terrifies me." Catherine nodded understandingly. "The residential aspect is daunting for any parent, especially with a child so young." She set down the music sheets. "For what it's worth, I believe Lily would thrive there. She has a maturity beyond her years when it comes to music, and a resilience that's rare in children her age." "And what about Eleanor?" Emily asked, voicing the concern that had been nagging at her. "She seems suddenly invested in Lily's future. I can't help wondering why." Catherine considered the question carefully. "My sister is complicated. Music represents both her greatest passion and her greatest regret. In Lily she sees raw, unbridled talent, what she might have been had circumstances been different." She paused. "And in the partnership between Lily and Alexander, she sees something truly special, something worth nurturing even if it doesn't align with her original vision for her son. So you think her offer is genuine, not some elaborate test?" "Eleanor doesn't play games," Catherine said firmly. "If she's offering to sponsor Lily at Eastman, she means it. Whether her motivations are entirely altruistic is another question." She smiled wryly. "Few of our actions ever are when we're honest with ourselves." As the day progressed, Emily's thoughts continued to circle around the Eastman opportunity and all it represented. During the children's afternoon lesson, she observed from the doorway as they worked on a challenging passage from Dvořák, their concentration absolute, their musical communication almost telepathic in its synchronicity. Watching them, Emily recognized a truth she had been reluctant to acknowledge. Lily's gift was extraordinary, potentially life-changing. To hold her back out of fear or caution might be the greatest disservice a parent could do. Yet as Lily looked up and beamed at her mother, still very much a child despite her remarkable talent, Emily felt the weight of the decision pressing upon her. The Eastman program represented more than just a summer of intensive musical training. It was potentially the first step on a path that would shape the course of Lily's entire life. And, once that path was chosen, there would be no turning back. January melted into February, and February surrendered to March, bringing with it the first tentative signs of spring to New York City. As the Eastman audition approached, Lily and Alex devoted themselves to preparation with an intensity that belied their young ages. 3 afternoons a week, they worked with Catherine at the community center, refining their technique and developing the Dvorak piece that would showcase both their individual talents and their remarkable synergy. 2 evenings a week, the specialized instructor arranged by Eleanor worked with Lily on technical fundamentals, filling in the gaps in her formal education with remarkable efficiency. To everyone's surprise, Eleanor had begun to attend these sessions occasionally, sitting silently in the back of the room, her expression unreadable as she watched the young girl absorb complex musical concepts with intuitive ease. For Emily, these months brought a complex mixture of emotions: pride in her daughter's blossoming talent, gratitude for the opportunities being extended to her, and underneath it all, a persistent anxiety about the changes these opportunities might bring to their lives. "You're overthinking this," her friend Sophia told her over coffee one Sunday afternoon. Sophia, a nurse at New York Presbyterian and Emily's closest confidant since college, had listened patiently to her concerns about the Eastman program. "This is the chance of a lifetime for Lily." "I know that," Emily sighed, warming her hands around her mug. "But she's so young, Sophia. Most of the kids in the program will be twice her age, and I can't help wondering if she's being pushed too." "Far too fast." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Is she unhappy? Does she seem stressed or overwhelmed?" Emily shook her head reluctantly. "No, she's thriving, more confident, more focused. She practically bounces out of bed on lesson days." "Then, what's really bothering you?" Sophia asked gently. "Is it that she'll be away from you for the summer? Or something else?" Emily was quiet for a long moment. What if this is just the beginning? What if Eastman leads to a specialized music school, then a conservatory? What if she moves further and further into a world I don't understand and can't protect her in? "Ah," Sophia nodded. "You're afraid of losing her." "Is that so wrong?" Emily asked defensively. "She's all I have." "Of course it's not wrong." Sophia reached across the table to squeeze her friend's hand. "It's completely natural. But Emily, this is Lily's gift, not yours, not the Whitmores, hers. Don't you have a responsibility to let her see how far it can take her?" Emily knew her friend was right, but the knowledge did little to ease the knot of anxiety that had taken up residence in her chest. Later that evening, as she tucked Lily into bed, she found herself studying her daughter's face with particular intensity, memorizing the delicate features that seemed to be changing subtly, day by day. "Mommy," Lily asked, noticing her scrutiny, "are you worried about the audition?" Emily smiled, smoothing back her daughter's curls. "A little, are you?" Lily considered the question seriously. "Not about the playing part. Alex and I know our piece really well, but Miss Catherine says there will be questions too, and I might not know all the answers because I started lessons later than most kids." "You've learned so much in such a short time," Emily assured her. "The Eastman people will be impressed by that." Lily was quiet for a moment. "If I get in, will you be sad that I'm gone for the summer?" The directness of the question caught Emily off guard. "I'll miss you terribly," she admitted. "But I won't be sad if it's something you really want to do." "I want to go," Lily said with surprising certainty. "It sounds scary but exciting too, and Alex says we'll learn things we can't learn anywhere else." She hesitated, then added, "But I'll miss you too, Mommy, more than anything." Emily gathered her daughter into a fierce hug, blinking back tears. "We still have plenty of time together before then, and the audition is the first step. Let's focus on that for now." The Eastman audition was scheduled for the 3rd Saturday, in March. As the date approached, Emily noticed a subtle shift in the dynamic at the Whitmore household. Eleanor, who had maintained a careful distance throughout Lily's musical development, began to take a more active interest. She appeared more frequently at rehearsals, occasionally offering precise technical suggestions that revealed her own considerable musical knowledge. More surprisingly, she had begun to include Emily in conversations about the children's progress. Brief, formal exchanges, but a significant departure from their previous, strictly employer-employee relationship. "Lily's arpeggios have improved considerably," she remarked one afternoon as Emily was arranging flowers in the music room before a lesson, though her left-hand fingering still needs refinement. "The new instructor you arranged has been a tremendous help," Emily replied. "Lily practices what he teaches, her every night before bed." "Discipline is essential," Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Talent alone is insufficient at the level they're approaching." She paused, then added, "The Eastman Committee will be looking for potential as much as current ability. They understand she's had limited formal training." This was the closest Eleanor had come to expressing confidence in Lily's chances, and Emily felt a surprising warmth at the implicit endorsement. "We're very grateful for all you and Mr. Whitmore have done." Eleanor made a dismissive gesture. "Alexander has benefited as much as Lily from their collaboration, perhaps more so." A shadow passed over her face. "His playing has gained a depth I feared he might never develop." Before Emily could respond to this unexpected candor, the children burst into the room, eager to begin their rehearsal. Eleanor immediately straightened, her moment of openness disappearing behind her usual composed facade. "Remember to focus on dynamics in the development section," she instructed them. "The contrast between pianissimo and forte creates the emotional tension the piece requires." As she left the room, Emily caught Alex watching his mother with a thoughtful expression. "She's been different lately," he commented quietly to Lily. "More like she used to be when she still played sometimes." "Does she play the piano now?" Lily asked curiously. Alex shook his head. "Not for years. Not since before I started lessons." He positioned his hands on the keys. "Let's work on that dynamic contrast she mentioned. It's the one thing we still need to perfect." The day of the audition dawned clear and crisp, the sky a brilliant blue that seemed to promise success. Emily had taken the day off with Eleanor's blessing to accompany Lily to the Eastman School's New York City location, a stately building near Lincoln Center that housed the program's administrative offices and audition spaces. The Whitmores would arrive separately with Alex, meeting them in the waiting area before the children's joint audition. As Emily helped Lily dress in her best outfit, a simple but elegant navy dress with a white collar, she noticed her daughter's unusual quietness. "Nervous, baby?" she asked gently. Lily nodded, her fingers worrying the hem of her dress. "What if I make a mistake? What if I forget the hard part in the middle?" Emily knelt before her. "Then you'll keep going, just like Miss Catherine taught you. But you won't forget. You and Alex have practiced this piece 100 times. What if they don't like how I play? Mrs. Whitmore says some people prefer technical precision over emotional expression." Emily was surprised by this insight, a remarkably sophisticated concern for a child Lily's age. "Then they're not the right teachers for you. But Miss Catherine says the Eastman program values both technical skill and artistic interpretation. That's why it's so special." Lily seemed partially reassured, but as they made their way to the audition location by taxi, Emily could feel her daughter's tension in the tightness of her small hand. The Eastman School's waiting area was filled with children and parents, the atmosphere thick with nervous anticipation. Emily immediately spotted the Whitmores, Eleanor impeccable in a tailored suit, James distinguished in charcoal grey, and Alex solemn in a blue blazer that complemented Lily's dress with a coincidence that Emily suspected was not entirely accidental. As Lily rushed to Alex's side, the two immediately falling into whispered conversation, Eleanor approached Emily. "They'll be auditioning in approximately 30 minutes, she said by way of greeting. "The committee consists of 5 members, including the program director and the head of piano studies." She glanced at Lily, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. "She looks composed." "On the outside," Emily replied. "Inside, she's terrified of disappointing everyone." Something flickered in Eleanor's eyes. recognition, perhaps even sympathy. A feeling I remember well. She straightened her already perfect posture. Catherine will be joining us shortly. She's arranged to accompany the children into the audition. Room to make introductions given their unusual circumstances. As they waited, Emily observed the other young musicians, most significantly older than Lily, all projecting an aura of serious purpose despite their youth. Parents reviewed sheet music with their children, whispered last-minute advice, or simply sat in tense silence. Catherine arrived with 10 minutes to spare, embracing both children warmly before joining the adults. "The committee is intrigued by your duo," she told them. It's highly unusual for the program to consider a collaborative audition, particularly with a pianist as young as Lily. They've made an exception based on the symphony director's recommendation and the video recording of their Christmas gala performance. "Video recording?" Emily asked, surprised. "I didn't know their performance was recorded." "Standard procedure for the Whitmore events," James explained. Eleanor had the videographer focus particularly on the children's performance. Before Emily could process this information, a door opened and a woman with a clipboard appeared. "Parker and Whitmore," she called, "the committee is ready for you now." Catherine gave both children an encouraging smile. "Remember what we practiced. Speak clearly, make eye contact, and most importantly, play from your hearts as well as your heads." As Catherine led the children toward the audition room, Lily glanced back at Emily, her expression a mixture of nervousness and determination. Emily gave her a thumbs up and her most confident smile, saving her anxiety for after the door closed behind them. The waiting period was excruciating. Emily found herself unable to sit still, pacing the small waiting area while the Whitmores remained composed in their seats. James periodically checked his watch, while Eleanor sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the closed door. After what seemed an eternity, but was in reality just over 30 minutes, the door reopened. Catherine emerged first, her expression carefully neutral, followed by the children. Alex looked serious but calm. Lily's face was flushed, her eyes bright, with what Emily couldn't immediately identify as excitement or distress. "Well?" James asked, rising to his feet. Catherine glanced at the children. "Why don't you tell them how it went?" Alex and Lily exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them before Alex spoke. "We played well. The committee asked a lot of questions about our collaborative process and how we develop interpretations together. There was a really hard question about harmonic structure," Lily added, "but Alex helped me answer it." And Lily explained, "How we use emotional cues to stay synchronized without a conductor," Alex continued. They seemed impressed by that. Catherine's professional composure finally cracked into a smile. They were more than impressed. The committee has asked for a second audition this afternoon. They want to hear the children perform individually as well as together. Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly, the equivalent of shocked surprise from anyone else. "That's highly unusual." "It's unprecedented," Catherine confirmed. "They're particularly interested in evaluating Lily's technical foundation, given her limited formal training." All eyes turned to Lily, who looked suddenly small and vulnerable despite her earlier confidence. "I don't have a solo piece prepared," she said in a small voice. "We've been working on the duet for weeks." Eleanor stepped forward, her decision apparently made in that instant. "You'll play the Mozart variation you were working on with Instructor Phillips last week. It's well within your technical capabilities, and it will demonstrate your ear for classical structure." Emily was startled by this direct intervention. "Are you sure she's ready? She's only been working on that piece for a short time." "She's ready," Eleanor said with unexpected certainty. "Phillips reports that she absorbed the piece remarkably quickly." She turned to Alex. "You'll perform the Chopin Nocturne you prepared for last month's recital." Catherine nodded approvingly. "Good choices, contrasting styles that will showcase their different strengths." She checked her watch. "We have 3 hours before the second audition. I suggest we use the practice room they've offered to review both pieces." As the group moved toward the designated practice space, Emily hung back, stopping Lily with a gentle hand on her shoulder. Are you okay with this, baby? It's a lot of pressure. Lily considered the question with surprising seriousness. It's scary, she admitted, but exciting too, and Mrs. Whitmore thinks I can do it. Her eyes widened slightly at this realization. She's never said that before. Emily glanced ahead to where Eleanor was walking with Alex, her posture as rigidly perfect as always, but something different in her bearing. A purposefulness, an engagement that had been absent in their previous interactions. I think, Emily said carefully, that Mrs. Whitmore sees something in you that reminds her of herself, something she values deeply. The next 3 hours passed in a focused blur. Catherine worked with each child individually, while the other practiced separately, refining interpretations and addressing technical challenges. To Emily's surprise, Eleanor participated actively in Lily's preparation, offering specific suggestions about phrasing and dynamics that revealed her own deep musical knowledge. The second theme requires more restraint, she advised, demonstrating the passage with her own hands positioned above Lily's, on the keys. Hold back here so that the emotional release in the recapitulation has greater impact. Lily nodded seriously, absorbing the instruction without question, like saving the biggest feeling for the end of the story. A ghost of a smile touched Eleanor's lips. Precisely. Musical structure is very much like narrative structure. Build tension, create expectation, then fulfill it, or subvert it, to move your audience. Emily watched this exchange with a mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. The Eleanor Whitmore guiding her daughter bore little resemblance to the reserved, sometimes cold employer she had known for months. This Eleanor was engaged, authoritative, passionate about the music, in a way that transformed her usual rigid composure into something approaching animation. At 2 o'clock, they returned to the audition room. This time, the children would perform, individually first, then together. Parents and Catherine would wait outside, as was standard procedure for the program. Remember what we practiced, Eleanor told both children as they prepared to enter. Technical precision is essential, but without emotional truth it's merely mechanical reproduction. Emily blinked at this advice, so different from the emphasis on technical perfection she had heard Eleanor stress in the past. Alex seemed equally surprised, studying his mother with curious eyes before nodding seriously. "We'll make you proud," he promised. As the children disappeared into the audition room once more, Emily found herself standing beside Eleanor in the waiting area, an unexpected solidarity forming between them. "Thank you," Emily said quietly, "for working with Lily, for believing in her." Eleanor kept her gaze fixed on the closed door. "Your daughter has extraordinary gifts, gifts that should not be squandered for lack of proper development." She paused, then added in a lower voice, "Gifts that remind me of what music can be, when it comes from a place of genuine feeling rather than mere technical achievement." The wait this time seemed even longer, the tension in the room palpable as minutes stretched into nearly an hour. When the door finally opened, the children emerged looking exhausted but triumphant, followed by an older man with silver hair and keen eyes who introduced himself as Dr. Harrison, the program director. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, Mrs. Parker," he acknowledged them with a nod. "I wanted to speak with you personally about what we've witnessed today," he gestured toward the children. "In my 30 years with the Eastman program, I have rarely encountered young musicians with such contrasting yet complementary gifts." Catherine, who had been speaking quietly with another committee member, joined them with an expectant expression. "Alexander possesses technical precision and musical intelligence well beyond his years," Dr. Harrison continued. "And Lily has a natural musicality, an intuitive understanding of emotional expression that simply cannot be taught." He smiled at the children. "Together, they create something quite remarkable." "Does that mean they're accepted?" James asked. "Directly." Dr. Harrison's expression grew more measured. "The committee has concerns about Lily's age and limited formal training. The program is typically structured for older students with more established foundations." Emily's heart sank, but before she could speak, Eleanor stepped forward. "What accommodations would be necessary for her successful participation?" she asked, her tone making it clear that rejection was not an option she was prepared to consider. "Doctor." Harrison seemed slightly taken aback by her directness. "We would require additional preparatory work before the summer session begins. Intensive theory training, technical foundation building. She would need to arrive 2 weeks early for specialized orientation." "Easily arranged," Eleanor replied, without hesitation. "And during the program itself? A modified schedule, perhaps, additional support from faculty mentors." He studied Eleanor curiously. "Mrs. Whitmore, you were once considered for Juilliard's piano program, were you not? Your reputation preceded you in musical circles." A flicker of something, pain, regret, crossed Eleanor's face before her composure reasserted itself. "That was many years ago, Dr. Harrison." "Yet you understand what would be required," he pressed. "The discipline, the commitment, the sacrifices necessary for serious musical development." "I do," Eleanor agreed, her voice steady. "As does Mrs. Parker." She glanced at Emily, including her in this assertion. "Both families are fully prepared to support these children's musical journey, whatever it may entail." Dr. Harrison considered this for a long moment, his gaze moving from the poised, confident Whitmores to Emily's more anxious but equally determined expression, and finally to the children themselves. Tired, but glowing with the special excitement that comes from having performed at the very edge of one's abilities. "In that case," he said finally, "I am pleased to inform you that both Alexander and Lily have been accepted to the Eastman Summer Intensive program. With the provisions discussed, of course." The children's reactions were immediate, Alex breaking into a rare, uninhibited grin, Lily jumping up and down with excitement before throwing her arms around her mother's waist. "We did it, Mummy," she exclaimed. "We really did it." Emily hugged her daughter tightly, her eyes meeting Eleanor's over Lily's head. To her surprise, she saw genuine emotion in the other woman's expression. Satisfaction, certainly, but also something deeper, more complex. A vicarious fulfillment, perhaps, of dreams long set aside. As they left the Eastman building, stepping into the golden late afternoon light, Emily felt a curious mixture of emotions. Pride in her daughter's achievement, anxiety about the summer, separation to come, and beneath it all, a growing sense that their lives had irrevocably changed course today. For better or worse, Lily had taken her first step onto a path that few children ever had the opportunity to walk. "Ice cream to celebrate?" James suggested, his usual reserved demeanor softened by the children's success. "I believe there's an excellent parlor just around the corner." As they walked toward the ice cream shop, Lily and Alex skipping ahead in their excitement, Emily found herself walking beside Eleanor. "This is just the beginning," Eleanor said quietly, her gaze fixed on the children. "You understand that, don't you? If they continue to develop at this rate, there will be more opportunities, more decisions to make." Emily nodded, feeling the weight of those future decisions already. "It's a little terrifying," she admitted. "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "Simply, it is." She paused, then added, "But it would be more terrifying to let such gifts go unnurtured, to watch potential wither for lack of proper cultivation." Something in her tone suggested personal knowledge of such regret. As they reached the ice cream parlor, Eleanor hesitated, then said with uncharacteristic directness, "We will need to work together, Mrs. Parker, for their sakes." The statement was part acknowledgement, part challenge, a recognition that despite their vastly different circumstances, they were now bound by a common purpose, nurturing the extraordinary musical partnership that had formed between their children. "Yes," Emily agreed, watching as Lily and Alex pressed their faces eagerly against the display case, debating flavor choices with the seriousness of symphony conductors selecting repertoire. "I believe we will." The spring passed in a whirlwind of preparation. As Lily approached her 6th birthday in April, her days became a carefully orchestrated balance of regular schoolwork, intensive music theory lessons, and continued rehearsals with Alex for their upcoming performance with the Manhattan Youth Symphony. Emily watched with a mixture of pride and amazement as her daughter absorbed complex musical concepts that challenged students twice her age. Under Eleanor's unexpected guidance, arrangements were made for Lily to receive accelerated instruction in music theory, sight reading, and technical fundamentals, addressing the gaps in her formal education while preserving the natural expressiveness that made her playing so distinctive. "She has perfect pitch," reported Mr. Phillips, the specialized instructor Eleanor had engaged, "and a harmonic memory I've encountered perhaps 3 times in 30 years of teaching. She can hear a complex chord progression once and reproduce it flawlessly." These reports delighted Catherine, but seemed to surprise Eleanor not at all, as if she had recognized these qualities in Lily from the first moment she heard her play. The Whitmore matriarch had undergone a subtle but significant transformation since the Eastman audition, her customary reserve giving way to a focused engagement with both children's musical development. 3 evenings a week, she invited Lily to join Alex in the music room after dinner, personally overseeing their practice sessions. Emily, initially concerned about this arrangement, found her fears easing as she observed these interactions. Eleanor was demanding but never harsh, pushing both children to excellence while remaining attuned to signs of fatigue or frustration. Most surprisingly, Eleanor had begun to play again herself, brief demonstrations at first guiding the children through particularly challenging passages, but gradually more extended explorations of the pieces they were studying. Her technique, though rusty from disuse, revealed the considerable talent she had once possessed. "I didn't know you could play like that," Alex remarked one evening after Eleanor demonstrated a complex section of Dvořák. "Why did you stop?" The question hung in the air, its innocence belying its emotional weight. Eleanor's hands stilled on the keys, her posture momentarily rigid before she answered with unexpected candor. "Life presents us with choices, Alexander. I chose a particular path, and that path led away from performance." She glanced at Lily, who was watching her with solemn attention. "But perhaps I can help guide others along paths I didn't take." As May approached, bringing with it the symphony, performance, and the looming summer separation, Emily noticed a growing tension in her daughter. Excitement about the opportunities ahead mixed with anxiety about the changes they would bring. "What if I forget everything while I'm at Eastman?" Lily worried one evening as Emily tucked her into bed. "What if I'm not good enough compared to the older kids?" Emily smoothed her daughter's curls. "You won't forget, and Dr. Harrison wouldn't have accepted you if he didn't believe you belonged." "There. But I'll be the youngest," Lily persisted. "Alex says most of the other kids will be 10 or older." "Which means they'll have been studying longer," Emily pointed out. "Not that they're more talented. Remember what Miss Catherine always says. Talent is the starting point, not the destination," Lily recited dutifully. She was quiet for a moment, then asked in a smaller voice, "Will you be okay without me for the summer, Mummy?" The question caught Emily by surprise, the role reversal striking her with unexpected force. Here was her 6-year-old daughter, worrying about her mother's emotional well-being while facing her own daunting challenges. "I'll miss you terribly," Emily said honestly, "but I'll be so proud knowing you're doing something important. Something that makes you happy." She kissed Lily's forehead. "And I'll come visit on parents' weekends. We'll talk on the phone every day." "Promise." "Cross my heart." As Lily drifted off to sleep, Emily remained by her bedside studying her daughter's peaceful face and wondering at the journey that had brought them here, from a chance piano performance at a society gathering to the cusp of a summer at one of the nation's most prestigious music programs. If someone had described this future to her a year ago, she would have dismissed it as an impossible fantasy. Yet here they were, their lives transformed by Lily's extraordinary gift and the unlikely friendship it had fostered between 2 children from vastly different worlds. The night of the Manhattan Youth Symphony performance arrived on a perfect spring evening in late May. The concert hall at Lincoln Center glowed with warm light as families and supporters filled the plush red seats, programs rustling as they located the names of their young musicians. Backstage, Emily helped Lily into her performance outfit, a midnight blue dress similar to the one she had worn at the Whitmore Gala, but with subtle silver embroidery along the hem that caught the light when she moved. Catherine had arranged for a professional stylist to tame Lily's unruly curls into an elegant arrangement secured with silver clips. "You look beautiful, baby," Emily said, blinking back unexpected tears, "like a real concert pianist." "I am a real concert pianist, Mommy," Lily replied with the innocent confidence of childhood. "Just a very small one." Emily laughed, the tension of the moment briefly broken. "Yes, you are. The very best small concert pianist in New York." Nearby, the Whitmores were engaged in their own pre-performance rituals. James straightened Alex's already perfect bow tie, while Eleanor made minute adjustments to his suit jacket. Unlike previous performances, where Alex had maintained a solemn formality, tonight he practically vibrated with barely contained excitement. "We're opening the entire program, Mrs. Parker," he told Emily when she approached with Lily. "Dr. Levinson says our piece sets the perfect tone for the evening." Dr. Marcus Levinson, the symphony's distinguished conductor, had taken a personal interest in the young duo after hearing them at a dress rehearsal. He had made the unprecedented decision to move them from the middle of the program, the traditional spot for younger performers, to the prestigious opening position. "5 minutes, everyone," called the stage manager, sending a ripple of anticipation through the gathered musicians. Eleanor approached, her expression composed but her eyes bright with an emotion Emily couldn't quite identify. "Alexander, Lily, a moment, please." The children looked up at her expectantly. "Remember what we discussed about the opening tempo," she said, her voice carrying the authority of professional experience. "Begin deliberately, with precision, then allow the emotional intensity to build organically through the development. Trust your preparation, trust your instincts, and most importantly," her gaze moved from her son to Lily, "trust each other." It was perhaps the most direct endorsement of their musical partnership Eleanor had ever expressed. Alex nodded seriously, while Lily beamed with the simple joy of being included in this moment of shared purpose. As the children were led away to take their positions, Emily found herself standing beside Eleanor in the wings, an echo of their shared vigil at the Eastman audition. "They're ready," Eleanor said more to herself than to Emily. "More than ready." "Thanks to you," Emily replied sincerely. "The time you've invested in them, especially in Lily, I don't know how to thank you properly." Eleanor's gaze remained fixed on the stage where the children were now being seated at the piano, adjusting the bench to accommodate their different heights. "I recognize in your daughter what might have been," she said quietly. "The pure joy of music, uncomplicated by expectation or obligation. I had that once before." She trailed off, then continued more formally. "Lily has reminded me why I began playing in the first place, for the love of the music itself, not for the accolades or achievements it might bring." Before Emily could respond to this unprecedented candor, the house lights dimmed. Dr. Levinson strode onto the stage to enthusiastic applause, bowing briefly before turning to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Manhattan Youth Symphony. Here's proud to present our spring showcase, celebrating the extraordinary talents of young musicians from across our city. We begin tonight with something truly special, a piano duo featuring 2 remarkable young artists, Alexander Whitmore, age 10, and Lily Parker, age 6. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience at the mention of Lily's age. These young musicians will perform Dvořák's Slavonic Dance No. 2 in E minor, in an arrangement they have developed collaboratively under the guidance of Catherine Bennett of the Bennett Community Arts Center. Please welcome Alexander and Lily." The applause was polite but curious as the spotlight centered on the children seated at the grand piano. They looked impossibly small on the vast stage, yet there was a composure in their posture, a seriousness of purpose that belied their years. With a glance at each other, a silent communication that had become their ritual, they began to play. The E